By this time, you should already be comfortable with basic sales, such as invoices and sales receipts, as well as accounts receivable. But in your business, you might need to send out an estimate or a quote before invoicing a client. In this chapter, you'll learn about that process. First, you'll have to learn what an estimate is and when to use one. After that, you'll learn how to record a sale and send an estimate to a client. Then you'll learn 2 ways to record an invoice based on an estimate. In the first example, you'll invoice for the entire estimate. And in the second example, you'll use progress invoicing to create multiple invoices over time as the job is completed. Last, you'll learn about reports that you can use to track the status of these estimates and what amount of them has already been invoiced. But first, let's talk about the basics of what an estimate is and when you should use one. Have you ever proposed future work for a client? Maybe you've told someone ahead of time how much a job or service will cost them before you actually invoiced? If you have, then you've created an estimate, or at least what QuickBooks considers an estimate. You might have called it a proposal, a quote, or a projection, but QuickBooks calls these estimates. Estimates are special transactions because they're non-posting. All that means is they don't actually affect any of your financial statements or your reports. In fact, the only reports that they affect are estimate reports. It's great to be able to send your client an estimate before you begin work on a project. And after you complete part or all of the project, you can use an invoice based on the estimate. In QuickBooks, you can even track whether or not an estimate has been accepted, rejected, or completed. In the next few topics, you learn how to create an estimate, invoice a customer from that estimate, and track estimates and how much of them have been completed.
Let's send an estimate to a customer. Select New, and then Estimate. Estimates have to be assigned to a customer or project, and in this case, we're going to send an estimate to Fort Worth Homes for work on the Convention Center project. The date should be the date you're issuing the estimate, and you can use the expiration date to tell your customer how long they have to accept the estimate. Filling out the products and services area of an estimate works just like any other sales transaction. But the important thing to remember is that no matter what you enter down here, your accounts will not be affected. We're estimating for some design services at $75 an hour for 10 hours of work. But we're also proposing some gardening services at $25 an hour for 40 hours of work. Fill out as many products and services here as you need. Estimates have similar options as other sales transactions, such as message displayed on estimate, memo, and attachments. Before saving, notice that the estimate is pending, which means that it hasn't been accepted by the client yet. If you're recording something that the client has already approved, click the drop-down arrow and choose Accepted. Click Save and Send to email the estimate to your customer. In this screen, you see a preview of what your customer receives. Make any changes on the left and click Save and Send. Let's go take a look at how the estimate affected the customer's record. Notice that there's still no balance for the Convention Center. The estimate by itself will never affect a customer's balance. You can still use this list to easily track which estimates you've issued. Just click the Estimates button at the top of the customer's list, and you'll see your open estimates. In the next topic, we get word from our client that they've approved the estimate, and we send them an invoice. The first step is optional, but it does help with reports. Move your cursor over Sales or Invoices and select Customers. Then click the Estimates filter at the top and choose the customer or job. Right now, the estimate is still marked as pending. For the best reporting possible, it's best to click the estimate. And at the top left, click the drop-down arrow. Then select Accepted from the menu. You can also include the name of the person who approved the estimate and when it was approved. Now save and close the estimate. These steps aren't necessary, but it helps you keep track of the status of your estimates. Now let's get started invoicing the customer. If you're already on this screen, just click Start Invoice. Or you can click New. Invoice like normal. Then just enter the customer or project. On the right side, you'll see a drawer and all of the open estimates and billable expenses that you can add onto the invoice. Click Add. And QuickBooks asks you if you want to invoice for the full estimate, a percentage of the estimate, or different amounts on each line. Choose to invoice for the full estimate for now. You'll learn about the other methods later. Be sure to assign a proper date to the invoice as well as the payment terms you're giving the customer. This invoice has everything that the estimate had, but if you've agreed to anything else with your client that wasn't on the original estimate, you can make changes here. Now we'll save and send the invoice. And you'll see the same screen you normally do when invoicing a client. Save and send the invoice. Notice that the amount of open estimates has gone down. And if you click the Open Invoices filter, then scroll down to the customer or project, you'll see the balance of the invoice that you sent. Next, you learn to create multiple invoices from the same estimate. If you send multiple invoices as a job is completed, estimates help you track what's been invoiced and what hasn't. This company just completed some of the work on a large estimate, so they're going to invoice for just what's been completed. Select New, Invoice. Enter the customer's name at the top. On the right side, you'll see a drawer and all of the open estimates and billable expenses that you can add onto the invoice. Click Add. In this window, you select between invoicing for the entire estimate, a percentage of the entire estimate, or an amount per product service that was on the estimate. So if you invoice over time for the entire estimate equally, choose the second option. If you invoice for individual product services as they are completed or delivered, choose the third option. This company completed some of the estimated tree trimming, but not the estimated work on a rock fountain. So they'll choose the third option. Right now, the invoice is for $0. To put something onto the invoice, click it. Then enter the amount or percent that you're invoicing. This company completed all of the work on the garage door and the garage install. No work was completed on the rock fountain or the installation of the rock fountain, so leave those at 0. And finally, 60% of the tree trimming was completed. Let's see what the customer sees when we send this invoice. Select Print or Preview, and Print or Preview again. The customer sees every line of what was originally estimated, but only the quantity and amounts that are being invoiced right now. By default, they will not see how much has been invoiced versus not invoiced for the estimate. But you can add that information when customizing your invoices and estimates from the Custom Form Styles window. Close the preview. And save and send the invoice. And send and close. Now the customer has an invoice for just the work that was completed. But will QuickBooks remember what was completed and what wasn't? Let's find out. Select New, Invoice. Enter the customer's name again. And then click Add. Now select the bottom option again. Note that the garage door and garage install didn't come over onto invoice, while the other products and services did. Be very careful though, because even though we invoiced for 60% of the tree trimming, QuickBooks still lets us invoice for the full 100% again. Next, you learn 2 better ways to track the progress invoicing for an estimate. The best ways to track the progress of an estimate is on the estimate itself, or with a report, like the Estimates in Progress Invoicing Summary Report. Let's look at the estimate first. On the estimate, you see how much has been invoiced and how much is left to be invoiced. So this method for tracking the progress of an estimate works perfectly fine. The problem is that it only lets you see one estimate at a time, and so it can be a little time-consuming. Fortunately, there's a way to look at multiple estimates at the same time. Open the Estimates in Progress Invoicing Summary by Customer report. This report shows you the status of your estimates and how much has been invoiced in total for each estimate. Use both of these methods to track how much is left to be invoiced from your estimates.